Now we welcome back to the Grandy Group, ELEANOR Clift, whom you know as the contributing editor for Newsweek, joins us semi-regular. ELEANOR, good morning.
Good morning, Fred.
I'm curious. I thought I understood Democratic and liberal mindset pretty well, but I'm kind of mystified by the choice of the Democratic convention in Charlotte, North Carolina. I thought that was pretty much behind enemy lines now, and I'm curious to get your take on why do you suppose the president and the Democratic Party chose Charlotte over, for example, St. Louis, Minneapolis, or Cleveland, who were the other contenders?
Well, it wasn't always behind enemy lines, and Barack Obama won North Carolina in 2008, and if he's going to win re-election, he needs to put together the same coalition that carried him to the White House in 2008, and I think North Carolina is definitely part of the mix.
Well, he won North Carolina slightly, you're right, but obviously he got some setbacks congressionally in the last go round. And the one thing, I guess the reason I'm asking you this is because one of the things that's got to strike at the core of his Democratic supporters is Charlotte, unless I'm very much mistaken, is still a non-union town, which means all of those hotels would be non-union. Now, surely his labor coalition has to be up in arms about that.
I don't know specifically about the union regulations, but if he's in North Carolina and there's no choice, I guess I haven't seen any reaction from any labor organizations complaining about North Carolina. Maybe they've got their eye on the bigger picture and figure if he can win North Carolina, that means he can win the presidency. So, I mean, you're always going to have fights in politics, but I think North Carolina is a good choice.
Maybe you think somehow they can get the unions into Charlotte then by going there, Fred.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, your mouth to Richard Trumka's ears, Brian.
I don't know. I'm just wondering. Hey, ELEANOR, I'm curious to get your take on the health care law. Obviously, there was a big ruling this week by the judge in Florida. They're ruling it unconstitutional. I mean, it's pretty clear that it's going to end up in the Supreme Court. The conventional wisdom is that it'll come down to Justice Kennedy. I'm wondering if you go along with that conventional wisdom, and how do you think he will, decide in this case?
I do. I think it's a pretty politically divided court. But then when I listened to the testimony of Harvard professor Charles Fried yesterday, and he's a conservative, and he said flatly that, of course, health care commerce can be regulated under the Commerce Clause, and he was so unequivocal about the fact that this is constitutional that I thought, well, even the conservatives on the Supreme Court may be ruling according to the law and won't politicize it. So I think that, there's a very good chance that this law will be upheld. And if it isn't, I think that it would be more narrowly ruled with tossing out the mandate. I don't think they would toss out the entire law. And I think you can rewrite the policy around the mandates to make it constitutional. And I recall Barack Obama didn't even support a mandate when he ran.
No, he was very much opposed to it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think you can still have health care reform. It makes it harder. It makes it harder to get everybody into the big insurance pool, but I think it's doable. So I don't think it's the end of the world.
Do you think that Elena Kagan would have to recuse herself from this case?
I would hope not, because I think that would really be tilting the playing field.
It would be, but she was the Solicitor General when Obamacare was enacted, which means she was essentially the chief legal advisor to the president. I'm just wondering if there is a protocol. I don't know what the historical precedent is for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, even if she was the Solicitor General, I don't think she was up on Capitol Hill trying to figure out the legality of the law. I just don't think she was involved in the actual law. So, and the legal challenges have come subsequently. So, I mean, I think to want her removed does take on a bit of a political aspect, and it's not really substantive.
Well, I think your observations about this being a judicial decision that takes on a political aspect is probably a foregone conclusion. And to that end, I'm just wondering, Bill Nelson, Democrat of Florida, has said, I want this to be expedited to the Supreme Court, which I assume means let's not go to the appellate level. Forget the 11th Circuit. Let's go right to the Supreme Court. What do you think the chances of that happening, which means the decision would come down maybe in 2011 and not in the presidential election year?
I don't see any inclination on the part of the White House to hurry it up. And I think that listening to the various scholars opine on this, it looks like it would be taken up in 212, and the decision would come down in 212. The mandate doesn't go into effect until 2014, so they've got time again on the substantive side of it. On the political side, whether it's 2011, 2012, I don't know, it's kind of pick your poison. I'm not sure.
Would the administration, do you think, come after states such as Florida, possibly Wisconsin, whose attorneys general, in some cases their governors, have said, we're not going to take one more step in implementing Obamacare, whether it's setting up the insurance exchanges or some other provision, because we believe in the severability aspect of this?
I wouldn't phrase it like you do, come after. I believe there's a provision in the law that if a state political leadership refuses to enact the law, that there's provision for the federal government to step in so that the citizens in the state are not denied health care coverage because of political decisions of their leaders. So I think it would proceed, yes.
How do you think the president has handled the Egypt situation? It's kind of interesting. I mean, he hasn't getting much criticism, I think, from politicians. Although you have some liberals who say, you know what, we really need to support Mubarak, and you have some conservatives who are, it's kind of split both Democrats and Republicans on this issue. That's why I think there's been some mild criticism. But how do you think
everybody's ambivalent. The people appreciate that Mubarak has taken some tough decisions and kept the peace with Israel, and that's in U.S. interest. But I think it is a pretty widespread consensus that it's time for him to go, and time for the U.S. to more closely align its foreign policy with its ideals. And how to do that is a balancing act. I mean, the president can't be picking leaders. He could create more animosity over there than there really is. And he can't just, toss Mubarak over the side, but I'm sure in these private conversations he's telling him it's over. And the brutality we saw yesterday, if that continues, then I think the president would have to speak out much more forcefully. I'm sure he's doing that in private.
Well, he did send the former ambassador to Egypt, Frank Wisner, longtime political diplomat and Arabist, to talk to Mubarak, but evidently Mubarak did not necessarily take the cue, because if you're looking at what's going on right now, he says, yes, I won't run again, but there's really a lifetime of change between now and September when those elections happen.
And he also put his goons out on the street.
And well, that's what we assume, but how much of the transition do you expect Mubarak to at least have some say in?
Well, I think, in retrospect, somebody who's been in power for as long as he has and the kind of regime that he's run, it was probably naive to think he would walk away without a fight, and we're watching the fight. I think whether he leaves in a week or a month or how this is engineered, he's going to be gone. And the economy can't sustain the paralysis of demonstrations every day, and the people are going to run out of food and money. So this is going to come to a head here.
But does that work to his advantage or to the insurgents' advantage? After a while, if people get tired and go home because they need to go back to work, or they're worried about,
it works to Mubarak's advantage, but he may well be radicalizing a movement, further radicalizing a movement. And I think that's, again, where I'm assuming the president is applying some pressure behind the scenes. And we do have a lever, and that is the aid that we give to
we sure do.
Egypt, and primarily to the military, and the fact that they stood aside and let the brutality happen yesterday does not work in their favor.
All right, Eleanor, good to talk to you. We always appreciate you coming on the show.
All right.
Thanks, Eleanor.
You.
Contributing to Editor of NEWSWEEK on the Grandy Group.